Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Shola Ogunlana. I am the director of the SAVE agency. This is the agency presentation helping the victims of human and sex trafficking. The goal of the SAVE agency is to provide the victims of human and sex trafficking a multidisciplinary, multifaceted, and comprehensive support service that has the objective of helping the victim recover from the traumatic experience and have that victim regain and rebuild his or her life and become self-sufficient. The SAVE agency will provide services to all the victims, male, female, child, of human and sex trafficking. We will also provide support services to their families. Once the victim is extracted from the trafficking environment, we'll have a safe house for that person. We'll also provide the victim mental, physical, substance abuse recovery services and provide education and job training with the goal of having the victim become self-sufficient. The SAVE agency will also work with the DA's office to aid in the successful prosecution of the perpetrator. We will provide the victim with an advocate and translator if needed. And then we'll collaborate with other agencies, both local, national, international, that work to help human and sex trafficking victims to secure financial assistance, housing, jobs. So when the victim relocates, they will be able to have a fresh new start. And of course, the resources there to aid in their ability to do that. The nature of the problem to be addressed is that human and sex trafficking are crimes that affect the global community in a negative way. It's a global problem. Um, Human and sex trafficking crimes are transnational crimes. Transnational crimes are offenses whose inception, proportion, and or indirect effects involve more than one country. Now, the main purpose of trafficking, human trafficking, is to exploit the person being trafficked. And victims of human and sex trafficking can be men, women, or children. They can come from all different kinds of walks of life, come from different socioeconomic backgrounds and levels of education. Victims can come from different kinds of households and different religious backgrounds. Human traffickers usually prey on those who are vulnerable. Vulnerable peoples are those who come from impoverished socioeconomic backgrounds. They have low to no education, come from dysfunctional households where they experience violence, and the traffickers make these vulnerable people believe that once they get involved with the trafficker, their life will be better, or the lives of their family members will be better, and that is a false promise. How human trafficking works is that there is a buyer that has a demand and the financial resources to obtain what they want, the product. They go to the trafficker who then takes the money and goes out and finds the product, the victim, the person. The victim is then sold, used as a commodity to the buyer, and the victim is then exploited by the buyer or buyers. Unfortunately, children are recruited into trafficking, either sex trafficking or labor, even organs. How traffickers recruit children is that they usually find a vulnerable child, a child that doesn't have the parental figure or guidance available in the household. They befriend the child, become that support system that that child is missing and longing for, provides friendship, sometimes maybe gifts, money, just to gain that trust of the child. Once that trust is gained, then the recruiter, brings the child into the trafficking organization, and then that child is then, trafficked and exploited. In 2019, the U.S. reported 11,500 human trafficking cases. Out of the cases reported, 8,248 cases were sex trafficking uh, crimes. And California and Texas usually consistently have the highest numbers of reported human trafficking cases. It was reported in 2019 that 1 out of 6 children who were reported missing were most likely victims of sex trafficking. Sex trafficking makes up 77% of human trafficking cases. And between 2008 and 2010, white women were 26% of the sex trafficking cases, and black women were 40% of the sex trafficking cases. Human and sex trafficking has a negative impact on the victim. The experience is traumatic and can leave physical and mental injuries on the victim. The victims need to have resources, healthcare resources, so that they can, and long-term healthcare resources, so that they can heal from the injuries, psychological and physical, sustained during the criminal act. Human and sex trafficking has a negative impact on the Bay Area community. Um, the Bay Area is an international area. There are major airports and ports where people and cargo are moving back and forth. It unfortunately makes the town perfect for trafficking goods. Um, so human and sex trafficking increases crime in the Bay Area. You have criminals that are coming from out of state, national, global communities coming in, conducting their criminal activity here. And you also have those criminals recruiting, criminals locally to engage in human and sex trafficking. Human and sex trafficking has a negative impact on the global community. The perpetrators of these crimes can organize and operate and commit the criminal activity in multiple cities and states and countries, and it increases the crimes in those communities. And, unfortunately, if one criminal gets arrested in one city or state, the criminal activity, the organization, the trafficking ring can still operate because they're in other countries, they're in other states. So the crime just continues on. Stakeholders of human and sex trafficking are those who have a vested interest in combating and eradicating the transnational crimes. So, on a local level, stakeholders would be like local law enforcement, mayors, governors, grassroots organizations, and of course, the citizens who live in the communities affected. National stakeholders would be federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI, politicians, and even the president. Global stakeholders would be international law enforcement agencies such as Interpol, presidents, royal families, humanitarian, and human rights organizations. Local organizations that I would like to collaborate with and who I might collaborate with. Human Exploitation and Trafficking Watch Program, HEAT, was created by Alameda County District Attorney's Office. The program provides a multidisciplinary approach to combating human and sex trafficking. They really work on the successful prosecution of the perpetrator. The program also works with local county, statewide organizations to help relocate the victim of the criminal act. Motivating, inspiring, supporting, and serving sexually exploited youth organization, also known as MISSY, is a nonprofit organization that provides a multidisciplinary approach to combating sex trafficking. The victims that the organization helps are female juveniles who have been victims of sex trafficking, and the organization provides the victims with psychological trauma-based resources. Bay Area Anti-Trafficking Coalition organization, BACT, is a nonprofit organization providing multidisciplinary approach to combating human and sex trafficking. The organization works with frontline industries such as hotels, airports, churches, so that they know how to identify the perpetrators, victims of human and sex trafficking, also so that they can identify when there is the sex and human trafficking activity occurring um, and get law enforcement involved as soon as possible. National organizations that I would like to collaborate with. Fair Girls is a national organization that works with female victims of human trafficking. They provide a psychological, trauma informed recovery services to the victims. They also provide housing and education so that the victims can be self sustaining once removed from the trafficking environment. And they also work with sex workers so that they can conduct their business in a safe manner and not have to get involved with a pimp or a human or sex trafficker. An international organization that I would like to collaborate with. The Global Alliance Against Trafficking in Women organization is an international organization comprised of 80 international non-governmental organizations that are throughout communities in Asia, Africa, Latin America, just to name a few. And the organizations work together to raise awareness of slave-like conditions, and the organization works to create laws that combat and stop human trafficking. In conclusion, the transnational crimes of human and sex trafficking um, really affect me personally. As a volunteer forensic pathology technician, I have performed autopsies on sex trafficking victims who were murdered. There was one case where there was a victim who was killed and thrown on the side of the road. And the perpetrator of the crime cut off her vagina, because she was no longer valuable to the trafficker. As a crime scene technician, I had a uh, juvenile use me as a way to escape the situation. She was um, working um, at the BART station and saw me, there in the area, and just came walking up to me and asked me for help. Which then, of course, I was able to get her services and get her removed from that situation. So she was able to escape. I don't know what happened afterwards, but um, the girls that she was working with uh, were, you know, were scared for her and scared for themselves, but also, understood that she took that opportunity to get away from her trafficker. So, you know, the SAVE agency will definitely work to provide resources to the victims of human and sex trafficking so that they can recover from the traumatic experience, regain and rebuild their lives, and become self-sufficient. Thank you for joining me.